What's up, guys? March Madness 2025 is here, and it's time for some bracketology. We're going to take a look at our March Madness brackets. We're going to identify some potential underdog winners, both as bettable spots and as spots on our sheet. We're going to look at some game theory approaches to picking the winner. And of course, we're going to look at some data-driven fades of potential pretender teams, right? We got a lot coming for you all in a short amount of time. We're going to fill out this bracket, I think, a little bit. I've got a little bit filled out already in terms of some underdogs for round one we're going to talk about. But let's jump into this. Now, every year at the Sharp app, John Statsational Alessia puts together, really, he does this for all sporting events, but metric-based contender and pretender article where we can eliminate some teams that historically will not make it to the Final Four or the championship, even though they're ranked fairly highly because of, or they aren't likely to because of metric factors. So the first category that John identifies in this article is AP ranking predicting tournament success. Essentially, a team that's unranked going into the season has never made it to the Final Four. Absolutely none of these teams have made the Final Four. They are 0 for 40. They are 0 for 41. Instead, they have been the victims of some notorious upsets, like the two-seeded Gamecocks losing by 13 points to the number 15 seed Copen State in the opening round of 1997. I had to go back a ways to get that example. That's how long John's been around doing this shit. But anyway, effectively, what the first category is telling us is that teams that are unranked going into the season that have big rankings for March Madness tend to not have success. They've never made it to the Final Four. So the three teams in that category, St. John's, Michigan State, and Texas Tech. You're like, oh, you thought I was going to give you, the 14 seed, the 16 seed, crappy ones to fade. No. St. John's, what's up, New York? Michigan State, Texas Tech were not ranked in the preseason. Therefore, we are going to avoid these in the Final Four based on that metric. If you believe in the metric, it's only been 100% accurate over the past 20 years, but you never know, right? Next category, three-point shooting. And I've got a little spreadsheet that kind of identifies some of this. So in the second category, it's three-point shooting, and teams shooting below 33% really have had a lack of success in making it to the Final Four. So here are the teams that are shooting 33% or less. Most of these aren't high seeded, so no biggie, but you've got Arizona there. You've got Texas A&M, a little scary. Again, there's Michigan State and St. John's again. So notice the correlation right there. We got Michigan State, St. John's, and Texas A&M now, but before it was Texas Tech. But Michigan State and St. John's, double red flags. Can't hit the three. Unranked in the preseason. Bye. That's all I needed to hear. Look for upsets at some point along the way for Michigan State and St. John's for sure. St. Mary's is another one, I guess, that can't hit the three. They're kind of seeded okay. The rest of these teams really weren't going to be somebody that you're worried about contending anyway, so we can ignore them. But both St. John's and Arizona, I guess, are good defensively. So St. John's has a lot of negative metrics as we'll go through the sheet, but they play good defense, so that kind of hides a little bit of it, but not that much, because their competition in this tournament is going to be much, much higher level than what they've been facing in the regular season. All right, next one, points per game. This is really important. Simple metric. How many points per game is a team scoring on average? While playing defense is crucial, keeping up with strong offensive teams during the tournament is also important. A total of 91 teams, seeded 1 to 4, have scored 70 or 3 or fewer points per game. Out of those, 14 teams made it to the Final Four, and once there was a champion in one of these low-scoring teams. So for the most part, out of 91 teams, only 10, 15% of them, about 15% of them have made the Final Four. It's not the most damning metric ever, but only one of them has ever won the tournament. There really aren't teams that are scoring that low this season. So this metric is pretty much useless, but it is noteworthy. I guess Houston, Tennessee, and Texas A&M are kind of a little sketchy down towards the bottom of the list, but for the most part, everybody's this isn't too scary of a number, and there's no real noteworthy teams to fade. Now, in a positive green light metric, coaching success. So John talks about how in tournaments, coaches play a vital role, and exceptional coaches tend to go further in these tournaments. It's happened historically. You can read up on why, but generally that does work out. Snake bit coaches, meaning some of the ones that have had trouble, Texas Tech and Maryland. So we'll see, because I kind of like Maryland for some other situations. But the three teams that stand out with legendary coaches, so there's a green for St. John's with Rick Pitino, of course, and then Houston and Michigan State again. So a couple of the teams that also showed negative metrics are showing up with great coaching. And what I think is going on there is those great coaches have driven slightly less than what should be their type of teams to contention. So they got them there, but because the talent might not be as great as it needs to be, all the metrics beyond the coaching, you're like, how are these guys winning all the time? Well, it's great coaching. So you see that with Michigan State and St. John's. Those two teams seem to pop up a lot. The teams with great coaches and all green light are going to be Duke, Florida State, Florida, and Houston. Let's go. Scoring margin. I'm sorry. So moving on to scoring margin. There we go. So we had, Houston, St. John's, and Michigan State for coaching benefits. But again, a couple of those teams have shown up as negative in every other metric that we measure. So I don't think this is enough. But scoring margin, this is huge. According to the now defunct Bracket Sciences PACE stat, scoring margin is the number one determinant for outperforming seed expectations. Scoring margins are king. Out of 142 teams that have been a 1-4 seed and have a 15-plus scoring margin going into the tournament, 56 have made the Final Four. That's a 40% margin. This is the most predictive metric of all. Why is no one talking about only this? This will tell you who will be in the Final Four. You're looking for a 15-plus point scoring margin. 21 of those teams, so almost 15%, have actually won the championship. This season, we've got 4 teams: Duke, Florida, Houston, obvious, and Maryland, actually. So let's go into here. Yeah. And these are the sketchy ones. Again, the negatives: Alabama, Wisconsin, Kentucky, Texas A&M, Arizona, Purdue. Be careful. Right now, I have 3 teams: Duke, Florida, and Houston. But Maryland is hanging around. It's right there. So again, what are our big scoring margin teams? Florida, Duke, Houston. With a nod to the big one for me is Maryland down here at 14.7. A nod to Maryland. A nod to Auburn. It's not quite there at the 15 number, but I mean, Duke clearing away. This is the most predictive metric. So if we're looking to try to figure out who's going to go further, that's where Maryland comes in. Got a little boost to Maryland, right? Almost 15. Really good scoring margins. Some of these other ones that are close by, great. Auburn right there. But if I needed a reason to pick not Auburn to win the whole thing, or, there it is. And Houston, who I'll talk about some ownership leverage we can get with them, is another interesting one at 15.7. So look out for the poor scoring margin teams. All these low numbers are sketchy. These are teams that are likely to get knocked out potentially earlier than we think. So Texas A&M, Kentucky, Purdue, Memphis, Michigan, Oregon, Ole Miss. These are teams to be careful of. All right. So with John's article here, his conclusions are your pretenders. At the second seed, Alabama, Michigan State, St. John's, be careful. Wisconsin, Kentucky, Texas Tech. Be careful. A lot of these, really. Pretty much all the 4 seeds, right? Texas A&M, Arizona, Purdue, Maryland. And your primary contenders are exactly who you thought. Now, normally this article doesn't conclude like all the 1 seeds are great, but that is pretty much what we're seeing this year. We'll see how it plays out. Now, here's my little spreadsheet that I made, and I want to talk a little bit about game theory in picking the winner. Now, ownership data for March Madness was very tricky to acquire this year. And I don't know if it's changing rapidly. We're still a day before the tournament. I got this yesterday. But what I like to do is first start with the Vegas odds, which I've put in this column here. So the win odds for each team. Here's your, if you want to bet Duke, you're betting plus 320. If you want to bet Florida, you're betting plus 380. Auburn plus 400. By the way, go Gators. What's up? That's my team. But Auburn plus 400, Houston plus 600, et cetera, down to all these other teams where the win probabilities are very, very low. So this year, it's a particularly interesting season where the favorites are super expected to win and they're going to be super high owned. Look at the difference between the top 4 teams and then the next. I couldn't get St. John's. I'm in New York, and we do not get odds for New York college sports here on the sports book. So I wasn't able to pull that up, but everything else is very clear. There's a massive drop between the top group this season and everybody else, and it shows in the stats, it shows in everything. So we're probably going to have to pick. I think this is a year where, for me, I'll go pretty chalky with my bracket for the most part, and we'll have these elite teams in the tournament. Now, I converted the win odds into implied probabilities for these top teams. And you can see here, Duke at plus 320 has an implied probability of 24% of winning the whole thing. That is very high. Florida really close to 20%. Auburn right there at Florida at 21%. Auburn at 20, and then Houston at 14.3. Now, I also went to the ESPN Bracket Challenge, and I was able to kind of scroll over some stuff and see what they claim the ownership is in that contest at the time for teams being picked to be the champion. Now, I don't know if this is coincidental. I don't know if the number is off. I've never quite seen something like this, but they're projecting that currently Duke, Florida, and Auburn are being picked almost equally at around 20% a pop. A little more for Duke, but they're all being picked almost equally to win the whole thing. So clearly, the word is out that, yeah, these prohibitive favorites are that for a reason. You know, does it make sense to fade them this year with that much chalk piled up? I've never seen anything like this, that much chalk piled up on the top 3 or 4. You know, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Depends what your risk tolerance is. I would say the larger the tournament that you're in, the more you should probably just fade it and accept your fate that, hey, I'm not going to win, but I'm probably not going to win if I take Duke, so might as well do something different. That's fine for the largest of tournaments. I would prefer having that game theory edge. And I think one of the only spots where you can get a little bit of edge here. So with a implied win probability of 14.3% and an ownership projection around 10%, there's a little bit of margin, EV margin for picking Houston, which is not that different of a favorite compared to the other big favorites, but it's owned at half the rate of those other ones. So at least that kind of eliminates, you're only really competing with 10% of the brackets with a team that has a 15% or 14% implied win probability. So you gain a little bit of edge there. And if I'm doing multiple brackets, I would definitely make a Houston one just for that reason, because that's the most leverage we can get. Again, I've effectively just added some of the metrics from John's article here, just like the greens are good signs, the reds are bad signs. So, you know, there's like a negative for each team. Houston's negative would be kind of low scoring team, 74 points per game, but their scoring margin's really good. So it kind of makes up for it. St. John's low scoring team, you know, not the best scoring margin. They got a little and can't hit the three, but they play great defense. They have a good coach. So, there are pros and cons for all of these teams. But as you go through it, we want to try to get pros exclusively and avoid any kind of cons. One team that was popping a little bit for me, as I mentioned before, is Maryland, just because they're not that high of a seed and they have this really nice scoring margin. I would say, even Texas Tech, not bad on the scoring side. They had some issues. Michigan State, not as good with this lower scoring margin. Certainly Alabama, sketchy. They're scoring 91 points per game and barely winning, so they clearly can't play defense. All those issues there. So I think we want to stick with these four teams and pretty much, maybe Tennessee as a fifth one. But for the most part, I think I am picking a 1 seed this year to win the whole thing. Now, let's get into some underdogs that can potentially win their matchups. That's the fun part of bracketology, right? Isn't that the best part? So let's start with number 12 seed, UC San Diego, beating number 5 Michigan. We already talked about Michigan having some metric issues. I don't think they belong there. Let's find that game, UC San Diego versus Michigan, because we're going to probably bet this bad boy as well. I will be betting every single one of these underdog plays. So here we go. UC San Diego plus 2.5. That's a really close spread right there. We can just grab the points or even take this one as a straight upset at plus 124 odds, right? The Tritons' momentum alongside Michigan's inconsistent play, especially against smaller schools, makes this a prime 12/5 upset candidate. Analysts really have flagged Michigan as vulnerable due to their reliance on size rather than perimeter defense, which UC San Diego should be able to exploit. There we go. So for our first bet, we're going to grab UC San Diego plus 2.5, and we're just going to put that one in. Actually, I don't want to do that in real time, but that will be a bet as well for me. Okay, so let's get that out of there. I'll put those in later, but you can take UC San Diego plus 2.5 or grab the plus 125 on the points. And you can see here in my bracket, I've got UC San Diego beating Houston, beating Michigan, and there we go. We move on to round 2. So that's one of our upsets. Next up, Colorado, another 12 versus 5. Colorado State over number 5, Memphis. Now let's find that one here as well. Now, not a lot of people are checking the odds, or they should be, but they're not, right? So Colorado State being a 12 seed, they are favored to win this game. The Colorado State is minus 1.5 against Memphis. So this is an easy one to put in, as you can see here. Now, for some reasoning, Colorado State, fresh off the Mountain West tournament win, they're boasting a balanced attack and a stingy defense. Memphis, while talented, has been hampered by injuries and inconsistent play late in the season. This matchup fits the classic 12/5 mold, with Colorado State's experience and resilience giving them an edge. Statistical models like ESPN's BPI and Posts on X have highlighted this is a high probability upset. And of course, when you check the sports books, you can see here that Colorado State is favored in this game. So this is a rather obvious upset spot. Next up, we've got number 13 Yale over number 4 Texas A&M. This one's a little longer of a long shot here. I really like taking the 7.5 for Yale. Yale enters with confidence after dominating the Ivy League tournament, and it has a history of upsetting SEC teams, including Auburn in 2024. Their top 20 offense in field goal and three-point percentage could overwhelm Texas A&M, which struggles with shooting efficiency. This is a reasonable dice roll on Yale here. They're plus 7.5. So, that's really different from the Colorado State. Everybody's going to be on that one. This one will be a little bit lower owned and a worthwhile risk. If you take Yale and then UC San Diego, you get this juicy San Diego Yale. So this kind of puts San Diego in the finals here against probably Auburn. So that's a really interesting way to build out that part of this bracket. Auburn just kind of easily moves on here. So it kind of builds itself. Our bracket is building itself. All right, let's keep going. Let's identify our next underdog spot. All right, guys, next up we have number 11, Drake, upsetting number 6, Missouri. Drake was a 30-win Missouri Valley Conference champion. They're facing an SEC-tested but inconsistent Missouri squad. The Bulldogs' defensive tenacity and experience from recent tournament runs make them dangerous. Missouri's offensive efficiency is elite, but their 0-8 SEC record last year suggests some volatility in this tournament. This 11/6 upset aligns with historical trends and some of the buzz that's going around out there. So taking a shot on number 11, Drake, over number 6, Missouri. And again, I will be betting all of these spots with the spread. Okay. Now, I've got another, big upset here. Let's keep them going. Got to pick some dogs. And we're heading out here to McNeese, number 12, taking on number 5, Clemson. And we're going to take another upset shot. I like these 12, 5, 11, 6 type spots, but we're going to take another shot on McNeese. And in this case, McNeese to upset number 5, Clemson. You got to take some shots with your bracket. Now, McNeese is currently a 7.5 point underdog in this game. They play nasty defense, and they've been on a 22-1 run since December. Clemson's just kind of been a middling team in the ACC. Clemson's lack of standout wins and a down year for the ACC in general make them a team that's ripe for the upset. And that's basically it. Just Clemson, not that great. McNeese, super hot going into the playoffs. What more going into the tournament? What more can you really ask for? So another spot for a potential upset. McNeese over number 5, Clemson. Number 12 over number 5. Bam. Now I've got one more for you guys. And I'm going to see if I can find it without having to pause. There we go. I love it. Number 10, Arkansas, plus 4.5, to defeat number 7, Kansas. Now, every one of these spots, by the way, guys, can be bet straight money line because we are picking them to win these games. But I like to take the points. Lock it in. But we can take these at the money line as well. Now, both teams really underperformed this season relative to kind of the hype in the preseason. But Arkansas has rallied of late, snuck their way into the tournament. They're coming in hot. Kansas kind of has their worst seeding pretty much in the last 25 years. Kansas has not been, we haven't seen Kansas as a number 7 seed, in the new millennium. They're struggling with road games. They're kind of struggling across the board. Even number 7 seed, this might be reputational. And this is just how it goes. So Arkansas's athleticism and desperation could outmatch Kansas's inconsistent play. And again, Kansas may be even overranked based on their history. Now, so we're going to grab Kansas there. And one final super sleeper. This one seems a little sketchy, guys, but number 13, High Point, to beat number 4, Purdue. The old number 13 winner. You don't see that every day. Now, let's find them on the sports book. Here we go. High Point is plus 7.5 or plus 295 on the money line. That's a pretty big upset. So Worth maybe taking a money line shot here. I think this is the least likely of the underdogs that I've picked out that will actually win this game. But a little bit of reasoning here on the high point play. They're coming into the tournament with a 14-game winning streak. Their shooting percentage overall, it's been top 10, and those are coming in hot. They're great shooters. Purdue, despite it being a talented team, tends to lean heavily on a few players, and that's sort of a shaky defensive proposition, making them susceptible to a hot shooting underdog. It is certainly within the realm of possibility. I love the hot teams coming in, especially to win in round one. They got nothing to lose. Purdue's been here, done that. Not that great this year. So take a shot on high point if you're really getting crazy in your tournament. I think that one is pushing it maybe a little bit, but it's also kind of fun. Now, if you take McNeese and high point, it looks kind of sketchy here. But it'd be really interesting to get McNeese going, along the way. And then, of course, you wind up with Houston here taking out this side of this bracket. So, guys, I think that's it for me. We've got it. So I wanted to do one more thing. Of course, for me, I'll be taking Florida in my primary, the Gators in my primary bracket to win the whole thing. They have been here before. Team is just coming on strong. All things Gators this year really leveled up. I'm not sure they're quite ready to win the tournament. I think the best pick the best win pick from an EV perspective is Houston, simply because their ownership is lower than their implied win probability for the tournament. So you can get some leverage with a Houston pick if that's what you're in. I'm taking Florida because my kid goes there. And so I want to root, right? I'm just going to have fun with it. But Houston is probably the sharpest EV play outside of the big three. So you want to take a shot. And then, of course, any team that's not one of the top fours, if you pick them and they actually win, you're probably going to win your bracket. So if you go to a Tennessee, if we go outside of the top group, you start taking, Alabama's a lot of red flags, Michigan State. The one that stood out to me the most, like I said, is Maryland. So let's go find our bracket here and make sure that we've got Maryland winning a couple of games as well. So that's kind of how I build my sheet. Okay, Maryland gets there. We like Maryland, fine. I'm going to go Florida, but Florida beats Maryland, but we'll get them there. St. John's gets past round one, but maybe gets upset in rounds 2 or 3, that kind of thing. Again, Texas Tech, not terrible. Even if St. John's or Texas Tech could get to the final, we got Florida making it out of this bracket. And I'll continue to go through this. I'll continue to go through this. I like to look at the odds for each game as well and see, we'll go one by one here, but Louisville, you got Louisville, they're -2.5, so really close game. I'm just going to go take a look. Louisville, whenever an underdog is kind of favored, I go that way, but we can get Louisville going there. Ole Miss, North Carolina, not a fan of Ole Miss really for this tournament. They got a lot of red flags, but not in round one. It's not the easiest to do this without pausing. Hang on. So here we go. We're going to take another upset here with North Carolina beating Ole Miss. North Carolina's favored, right? North Carolina's favored, and they're the 11th seed. We saw a lot of issues with Ole Miss in the metrics, and it shows up in the odds. So we're going to take Ole Miss here. Iowa State versus Lipscomb. I can confidently take Iowa State there. Marquette, New Mexico. Got Marquette here as slight favorites, -3.5 against New Mexico. Slight favorites, can kind of go either way with this one. I'm going to take Mich State. Again, Michigan State is kind of one of on our pretender list. So what I'm going to do is advance them, but I'll have Iowa making it to the final, and then we'll make a decision on Iowa Auburn in a minute. Let's go. See, we're filling out a bracket. That's it, right? Now let's go over to this side of the bracket. We got Mississippi, Baylor. Let's look that one up. You can see here Mississippi Baylor is basically a pick 'em with Mississippi get -1 right now, -120. This is just a pick 'em spot. So you can go either way here. Mississippi Baylor, 8-9. I don't have a preference. Doesn't matter. Go with 9. Another upset. Doesn't matter. Duke's beaten whoever gets past that round anyway. Oregon, Liberty. And here we've got Oregon -6.5 in this one. So, yeah, pretty much as expected. Oregon, healthy favorite. We can't take another 12 underdog. How many 12s? How many under 12 underdogs can we pick? Can't keep going with that. So we advance Oregon, Arizona, Akron. Let's get that one here. And Arizona's a heavy favorite, -14.5. If you think Akron is going to win that game, just bet it +800. You'll make more money than you will ever dream of making on your bracket. So that's an easy advance for Arizona. And we take Duke to the end here. Let's see here. BYU versus VCU. BYU is another one. They should do well early on, I think, but they got a little bit of, not clear on how far they can go. Yeah, there it is. This is even pretty close in round 1. So I might be interested in an upset here, but BYU -2.5 against VCU. That's the 6-11. I don't mind taking a shot on VCU there. We'll go Wisconsin, Montana. We're going to advance Wisconsin there. St. Mary's, Vanderbilt. Vando, where are you? Here we go. St. Mary -4.5 against Vando. St. Mary's, slight favorite, slightly better odds. Fine by me. We're going to take, of course, Alabama against Robert Morris. Alabama advances here. Wisconsin versus Duke. We advance Duke to the Final Four. Right now, Midwestern bracket. Houston already there. Gonzaga, Georgia. Let's take Gonzo's another one with some concerns in terms of their metrics. Not sure that is something to be worried about in round 1. Gonzo -6.5. So yeah, look for them probably to get past this first round, but we'll give them a hard time beyond that. So in our bracket, yeah, we're gonna advance Gonzo here, but they're not touching Houston, so whatevs, right? Let's keep on going. Illinois versus whoever their opponent is, Texas or Xavier. Let's find the Illinois situation. All right, here we go. Illinois versus Xavier. Illinois -2.5 in this one. So close game. 6-11, 2-pointer. I'm going with the upset here with Xavier, just, YOLO, right? As we fill this bracket out, I'm going with the underdog. We'll take another shot. Kentucky, Troy. We're going to take Kentucky there. We're going to have Kentucky advance as well, right? UCLA versus Utah State. See if I can quick find that or if I have to pause here. Come on. There we go. UCLA -5.5 against Utah State. Close enough, but we'll go that way. Of course, Tennessee. Tennessee's got a real shot to make a run here. Tennessee versus Kentucky. That's where it gets a little interesting. I'm going to advance Tennessee and, of course, Houston here. And we have pretty much our Final Four getting all set up as we speak. I'm going to keep it simple. Duke versus Florida, with Florida being my winner, guys. That's going to do it. Now, on the Sharp app itself, for each one of these games, we also have pregame prediction models from our AI-based NCAA basketball prediction machine. That's on the app, on Sharp app, so make sure to check that out. That has been very bettable as well, and I'll be betting those and putting my plays in the Sharp app. So make sure to check that out as well. And guys, good luck in March Madness this season. Let's kick ass. I will be including a link to a bracket challenge that everybody can get involved with in the description below. You're going to enter for free. We'll give you some swag prizes to the winners. So make sure to check that out as well. Good luck this season. Let's kick ass. Take care, everyone.